Hi everybody, it's Max J. Miller, co-author with Robert Hollis of the upcoming How Is That Working? And today I'm going to continue from yesterday reading the introduction to my earlier book called How Do You Know That? The capacity of hero stories to inspire and encourage us, while awesome, doesn't begin to scratch the surface of the pervasive power they wield in our lives on an everyday basis. Our deep abiding fondness of hero stories signifies a more complex and profound relationship with these stories than one might suspect. In his classic study of heroic stories and myths, The Hero with a Thousand Faces, Joseph Campbell explores the role hero stories have played throughout human history. Campbell shows how primitive peoples developed hero stories to aid in the rituals of initiation. His research explores the structure of hero stories as they follow the three-part pattern of the rites of passage: a separation from the everyday world, a penetration into some source of power, and a life-enhancing return. According to Campbell, hero stories present myriad variations of a single universal form through which symbolic expression is given to the unconscious desires, fears, and tensions that underlie the conscious patterns of human behavior. Though contemporary critics of modern culture assert that we have abandoned initiatory rites of passage to our peril, Campbell argues convincingly that hero stories have continued to serve as repositories of the wisdom, values, and yearnings of human civilization. Whereas the social behavior of animals is largely governed by instinct, passed on genetically from generation to generation, human societies externalize our complex value systems and social norms through language, and we pass these on through stories. You might think of this ancient collection of stories and myths as a playbook for the game of living handed down through countless generations. In this playbook, humanity has compiled and refined its collective insight about how the game of life is to be played. Artists, poets, musicians, and storytellers of all kinds have contributed to this archive of human wisdom, in which, as Campbell describes, a multitude of heroic figures passing through the classic stages of the universal adventure help us to understand not only the meaning of those images for contemporary life, but also the singleness of the human spirit in its aspirations, powers, vicissitudes, and wisdom. Unfortunately, our modern rationalistic mentality too readily dismisses the power contained in these stories. The term myth comes from mythos, the Greek word for story. In English and other Western languages, myth has historically denoted a narrative that conveys profound insight or wisdom about the human condition. Today, however, in popular usage, myth connotes fiction or superstition, a misrepresentation of the truth, or a widely held but inaccurate idea or belief. This is the notion behind the popular TV show Mythbusters. I'm all for disabusing the public of false beliefs and ideas, but sadly, this condescending post-Enlightenment interpretation of myth deprives us of the wise heritage of our ancestors. This ironic modern perception arises from attempting to read these ancient stories literally as history. Campbell writes, "Wherever the poetry of myth is interpreted as biography, history, or science, it is killed." Myth interpreted as natural law or unchanging truth in this way becomes a bulwark defending tradition and the status quo. Understood in this way, modern rejection of myth makes perfect sense. As the proverb goes, the truth believed becomes a lie. However, as Campbell asserts, hero myths distinctively challenge the status quo. Hero stories point exuberantly to the creative, innovative, redemptive, life-enriching, life-expanding source of our being. Our modern disenchantment with ancient myths and stories seems that it would diminish their power. To some extent, in effect, we have set that precious playbook for living out of our reach. And yet, more devastating, our offhanded dismissal of myth as a valuable resource blinds us to an essential dimension of our existence. Whether or not we acknowledge it, stories and storytelling shape our experience of life today as much as ever. Stories shape our identities, they define boundaries for what we perceive as possible, they provide meaning and context for our lives, and they hold the keys to the human psyche and our development as human beings. If you wish to have a say in the outcome of your own heroic adventure, you must discover and explore those stories that animate your life and the world you inhabit. That's the end of section 2. I'll share another piece of it with you tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in. Please interact with me, ask questions, engage. I appreciate the interaction with you. Bye-bye for now.